This is the Alden Report.
Hey, it's Mike Alden. I hope you're enjoying the Alden Report as much as I am. I love bringing to you new and exciting people that add value to your life. I'm also super excited to announce my latest book, Bestseller Secrets. Listen, if you're an author, maybe you're thinking about writing a book, maybe you've already written a book, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to continue to grow your brand, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to bring in more leads, maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you wrote a cookbook or a children's book, maybe you wrote a fantasy book, a self-help book, a tell-all book, a novel. It doesn't really matter. In my latest book, Bestseller Secrets, I give you all the information that I've literally spent millions of dollars trying to figure this thing out, and I'm going to give it to you absolutely free with my book, Bestseller Secrets. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com. I give you all the information that I've spent literally millions of dollars trying to figure this whole world out. My books have gone on to do amazing things. I'm a 3-time Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestselling author. I've hit number 1 on Amazon hundreds of times. My books have been the number 1 book in the world against all books in every category. And I've also done this for other authors. And I'm giving you this information absolutely free. Just go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. You got to pay a small processing fee, but it doesn't really matter, again, because I've spent millions of dollars. And here's the other secret. You can do all this stuff yourself. If you don't have a team, that's okay. If you don't have a lot of time, that's okay. You read the information in my book, again, whether you just started writing a book, whether you've written the book, whether you wrote the book years ago, and you want to kind of resurrect it. In my book, Bestseller Secrets, I show you exactly what you need to do, and I'm giving you the book absolutely free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com, download the book, take that information, use it to become a bona fide, legitimate number 1 bestseller. I show you how to become a number 1 bestseller in less than 24 hours. And again, I'm giving you this information for free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com.
This is the Alden Report.
All right, my name is Michael Alden. We are here in Blue Vase Studios. I'm rocking my 99-cent glasses. I'm a little shaved up. I shaved up. We're getting into the springtime. It's getting warm out. I still have the sweatshirt on. I got my grateful hat, and I'm just grateful for my next guest. Her name is Rita Goodroe. We actually met on this amazing app that you've probably heard me talking about, incessantly, called Clubhouse. And we just connected almost instantly. She's a recovering lawyer. She is a dating coach. She's a business strategist, and she's just all in all, just a great human being. And, we've had a lot of conversations, and I just really love her business acumen. And I love what she's doing for not only just the whole business community, but she loves to focus as well on, women entrepreneurs and really kind of help them grow their businesses. So I'm excited. We have a lot of women entrepreneurs that listen to the Alden Report. So Rita, thanks so much for being my guest.
I'm excited. I can't wait to talk with you today.
So I just want to jump right into this one. So, okay. So we're both lawyers. We don't practice anymore, but how do you go from, and I know you've talked about this before, but it's an interesting story. How do you go from being a lawyer, a corporate lawyer, to, you did corporate law, I think, right? To dating coach? Like, how does that happen? I mean, that's just bizarre to me.
That was weird. It's definitely not a straight line. So I think it's important to know that I was an attorney for about 13 years, a practicing attorney for 13 years. And about the last couple of years of that, I was running a meetup group. It's when Meetup group was new. Meetup was kind of like a hot thing. It was it was the new thing for people to get together. And I started a meetup group called Singles in the Suburbs. And it was for single people living in the suburbs of DC. It wasn't like a dating group, but it was like, just meet other people who are single, right? Like, who aren't married and wanting to stay in all the time. Like, we just wanted to go out and make friends. And so I started the group, and the group became really popular, and it became like the number 1 singles group in the DC area for a while. So it blew up to over 5,000 members eventually. And so I was running that group. But the thing is right after I started the group, I met a guy like a month into running the group. So I met this guy, we started dating, and we ran the group together for 5 years. So we dated for 5 years. And then one really sad night, he broke up with me. It was a sad story. He left me in the parking lot, drove away at like 2:00 in the morning. I mean, I had another vehicle there, but he like took off in our car and left me. And so I was like really brokenhearted. And I I went to my best friend's house with a bottle of wine the next day, and I did what, we do. We just cry and vent. And as I was venting, I realized that I had kind of said that I had been in 5 long-term relationships in my life. And the only thing that these relationships had in common were that they had ended, and me. And so I said, well, maybe I might have something to do with why. Maybe. I mean,
What
it's
is the
crazy.
common denominator here?
Yeah, maybe I might have something to do with why they're falling apart. Maybe. But I kept drinking the bottle of wine. And by the end of the bottle of wine, I had started talking about my 35th birthday, which was coming up. And I decided that to celebrate my 35th birthday, I was going to go on 35 dates in 35 days, and I was going to blog all about it. I don't remember how I quite got there, but that's where I got. And I sent an email out to like my singles group and to all my friends saying, hey, from this date to this date, I just want to fill every date, every date on the calendar with a date. I don't want to know anything about the guy. I don't care. I don't want to know his age or race or what he did for a living. And I want him to pick the activity, because the point for me at that moment was to do things. I wasn't ready for love. Like I had just gotten through this breakup. I'd not even gotten through it. It was like the very next day. So I just wanted to like meet people I would normally not meet and do things I would normally not do, so that I would have to be uncomfortable with it and figure out what my habits were and what my reactions were, so that I could figure out what I was doing to like sabotage my relationship. And so the next day I woke up and I had all of these emails from these guys who were like, this sounds incredible. This is what dating is supposed to be like, just fun and meeting a person and no pressure. And like, this is so great. You must have a great personality to like want to do this. So like, let's do it. And I filled like all 35 dates. And I was like, I guess I'm doing this. And I did. The blog is still out there, blogged all about it. And yeah. And then one day I logged into my blog and it went from like a couple hundred readers to like many hundreds of thousands of readers. And I was like, what happened? And it turned out James Altucher, who is a big time writer, blogger, kind of guy in the entrepreneurship and finance space, he had found my blog and he mentioned me in his blog saying, hey, you should meet this girl. She's a total love addict. And like, she's doing what like cigarette smokers do to break the habit, like overdosing on the thing so that she like, gets rid of all these bad habits. And I hadn't thought of it like that, but it wasn't exactly that, but whatever. I had hundreds of thousands of readers on my blog. And so people started asking me like if I would date coach them. They were like, oh, the lesson from your blog about this date really spoke to me. And like, I implemented it and it really helped. Will you date coach me? And I was like, yeah, I'm an attorney. Like, and they're like, no, you should be a dating coach. And I was like, yeah, you should call my mom and tell my mom I'm going to quit the law. And because you're never too old to care, I was like, you should tell my mom that I'm going to quit the law to be a dating coach and tell me how that conversation goes. And I was like, if it goes well, maybe I'll do it. But, I remember walking into work one day and they were restructuring. So I did work in-house for a company and we didn't know it at the time, but they were selling the company and they were getting it all ready for the split and all this stuff. So they outsourced the entire corporate real estate department, which is where I worked, to another company. And this company said, hey, you get to keep your job, Rita, and you're going to be on contract with the company you work for. So everything's the same, except you're not really an attorney for us because you're not doing work for us. You're on contract with this other company, but you're not really an attorney for them because you're on contract. So we're going to call you a legal compliance manager. And I was like, and I'm going to quit because I saw where that was going. And I did. I quit. And that's when I kind of stepped into my life as a dating coach. I thought, well, now's the time. I had been doing it. Like, I think it's important to hear the time. So 2011 was when I did my 35 dates. In 2012, I started kind of play date coaching, just, doing it on the side. It was 2014 that I quit my job and left and came home. And by this time I was married and I told my husband, he was like, how was your day? And I was like, cool. I'm a dating coach now. and he was like, okay, cool. You've got 3 months to make that work. We just got married. We had gotten married literally the month before. He was like, I married an attorney. I don't know what happened, but cool. He's like, you've got 3 months to make it work. We don't really have the money for you to just keep playing around with this. So I knew I didn't want to go back to the law, threw myself into it. And within 3 months I had surpassed my attorney salary doing the date coaching thing. And I just kind of, went from there. And a year late, by the end of that first year, I had really transitioned full-time into business coaching, which is what I've been doing now for almost 7 years.
It's really interesting too what you said, and by the way, it's such a great story. And it's like, who would have thought, right? Like I'm sure your mom was like, "Oh my God," and law school, the whole thing, and we're both
Who
lawyers.
would have thought that I'd have to talk about my ex-boyfriend for the rest of my life because he's part of my story, right?
But the other interesting thing that I wanted to just kind of just dive into is you actually didn't just make a jump, right? You were doing this kind of like the whole everyone like it's kind of a term of art these days, the side hustle, and you had the side hustle going on, but that's exactly what you were doing, right? You were just kind of working out the model while you were still, you know, paying, still working as an attorney and, paying your bills and putting food on the table. You didn't just irrationally say, I'm going to do this, right? Let's
No, it's not
talk a
like
little bit
table
about that, because I
flipped.
think a lot of people talk about, oh, you got to go all in and there's
Yeah.
no plan B. I don't believe that. So tell me what you.
So there are a couple of things to unpack there. So like I say I surpassed my attorney salary in 3 months, which is technically true. Technically, from the date I started my full-time business till 3 months later, I surpassed my attorney salary because that's the only time I was really like pulling in money in a hardcore way like that in my business. But the reality is I had been building this business from the day I started my singles group, right? I had started building credibility, authority, trust in a community. The media was coming to me all the time, running the largest singles group to quote me around things around dating and being single. Before I even knew I was going to be a dating coach, I had started building credibility and expertise and authority in this space and a community that was ready to support me. And I was doing everything that you're supposed to do for a business. And I didn't know I was building a business. So when I pulled the trigger to quit and do my business, right? The clients were there to support me because I had been building one the whole time without knowing it, right? But then the other piece of that is I had just gotten married and I inherited health insurance with that marriage. I knew that if I quit my job, I was still going to be covered under medical insurance. I knew because I had been dabbling a little bit, I could get clients if I had made money from kind of playing around with it as a hobby, if I really focused my energy on it. And for those 2 years or a year and a half where I was like part-time, I had started speaking. I had started kind of, really like building knowledge and awareness that I was date coaching. So it wasn't a surprise to people. I already kind of had people who were ready for it. I had built a whole community, right? I had the stability of having 3 months of savings. And I knew if it didn't work, I was just going to go back and get another job anyway, and like keep building the date coaching business while I was working the other job. I think I did pick up a couple of document review jobs during that time to float some of the more difficult weeks that happened in those, first, couple of, first year, right? If like I surpassed my attorney salary and then it kind of dropped again, right? And then it goes up and then it drops. And so I took like odd attorney jobs to help float that a little bit. So I definitely it was not a haphazard decision. It was an instant decision, but I had things in place for that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, again, I think it's important, for those that are listening and watching right now. Again, there's a school of thought that you got to go all in, and you just got to find your passion and all these other things. And there's certain truth to that. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs make the big mistake because they feel like in order to make it work, they just have to do this. And I've seen it happen time in and time out where they'll take that leap and then they miserably fail because. Look, I mean, you work with entrepreneurs day in and day out now. We'll talk about that. But a lot of times this stuff just doesn't work.
No, and it's a terrible decision to build your business from a place of scarcity, right? Meaning if you don't have money to actually make ends meet, if you've burned your bridges so that you're scared that you can't pay bills or rent or food, I'm not talking about the luxury stuff, but I'm talking about basic necessities. If you're like, I don't know how I'm going to have money to make it work, right? Like you're going to make terrible decisions in the business that you're building. You're going to take clients you don't want at price points you shouldn't be taking them at, doing work that doesn't light you up, and then you're going to wonder why your business isn't working, right? So it's the worst place to be is in scarcity to build your business. So when you have money coming in, right, that day job, treat that day job like a business loan and say, this is like a loan and I have to pay interest back on the loan. Those are the extra hours I have to work, but you will make smart, solid decisions when you know that you've got your necessities covered, and then you're going to build a really strong business.
Yeah, and you don't put yourself under the pressures, right? I mean, because you trust me, for those who are thinking about starting a business or in the beginning stages of starting the business, there's a lot of pressure, and there's always pressure, even moving forward. So why would you intentionally put yourself in this painful moment when you can just ease into it. I think that's the smartest thing to do. And also even the other part, like, again, people say, oh, well, I don't like to have a plan B, because if plan B just doesn't allow you to really have the passion or the drive. That's just not true. I don't believe that. I think that if you're really passionate about something, go ahead and go quote all in during the time when you can, right? And continue to pay your bills. And then when it makes sense, exactly what you did. It's a great decision. 3 months, I'm gonna give myself 3 months, or your husband gave you 3 months.
Yeah, he gave me.
And if we can't do it, then we go back, and another thing you said too is, if you had gone back, you also said, what you said was, well, I was just going to keep doing it anyway until we figure it out. So it doesn't, that's the other part too. If you give yourself that, that safety net, you can just kind of tweak things and work things out. And I've done that over and over and over again. Because again, for those listening, watching, most of the stuff that you try doesn't work. And so I think it's really important. And again, I want to just kind of, like you said, unpack some of the things. When you were doing this as well, I wrote down the 3 words: credibility, authority, and trust. And also you didn't plan on being a dating coach. You weren't a dating coach. You learned it, right? As you go. I mean, you were literally thrown in the fire, and you're like, I'm a lawyer. Like, I'm not a dating coach. But then you became that because obviously you were passionate about it. Talk a little bit about how important it is to build that credibility, that authority, that trust, and then be that, what Kevin Harrington talks about, that like that person of influence within that community, and why that's important to get those things before you can really go out there and sell it.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the way that a mind works when they make purchasing decisions, right? When you really get into the psychology of what allows people to feel confident handing over money, they have to know that they're going to get a return on it in some way, that they can trust you to deliver on your promise, that it's going to be a good experience to work with you, that you've given results to other people, that you know what you're talking about, right? So you have to build that over time with people. And so they become aware of you, but then they go through what's called the consideration phase of the customer journey, where they have to consider you. And what they're considering is all of those things. Can that person deliver on their promises? Is it going to be a good experience to work with them? Do they have expertise, credibility, authority? And that all comes to them. What makes them know that these things are true is that you've spoken to groups, you've worked with people, you've had clients, you have testimonials, you can talk about case studies, you're doing, free Facebook Lives, free webinars, free challenges that are allowing people to kind of interact with you and work with you to say, oh yeah, see, it would be a good experience. I really do get a result when I work with her, right? Like, that takes time for people to realize you're a subject matter expert and that you're a person that they like and trust. And right, they have to like check all these boxes. Now, sometimes that can happen quickly, depending on how a person becomes aware of you. But most times it takes a little bit, right? And it happens for different people at different times, especially if you're asking for a lot of money. A lot of entrepreneurs are asking for people to hand over a sizable investment to them. Those people need to feel confident in that investment, And so you really have to show up in that way. And so I have been doing that by leading the singles group, by showing up for them, by being consistent in the events I was posting and how I showed up, by giving them a result in their life that they wanted, by standing for them, then getting into the news and getting into the media and talking about the stuff, then doing it myself, sharing my stories. That was what allowed people to like me as a person. And then they trusted me because they're like, well, Rita knows where I'm at. She's been through this before. She got to the other side. And then I started helping other people do it. And they were like, oh, wow, look at this person saying all this stuff about working with Rita and how it changed their dating and changed their life. That needs to be me too. So you need to make space for all of that to happen. So if you think you can just start a business without having had done that in some kind of capacity already, you can start a business tomorrow, but it's going to take you a while to then get the clients, the paying clients that you need at the rate that you're wanting, because you have to make space for all of that.
It makes total sense. In a second, I want to talk to you about how you then transition from doing this stuff for free to charging, because, I know that the answers you're going to give are going to be applicable pretty much to any business, and kind of how you did that. We've been on with Rita Goodroe. And again, we met on this amazing app called Clubhouse. She is a recovering attorney turned dating coach. Now she trains and works with businesses all over the world, from just the wantrepreneurs, she calls them, to the mompreneurs, and everything everything in between. And, again, if you've heard her story, what's great about her is that she learned this stuff herself as well. I talk about this stuff a lot. It's like, when you study for the bar exam, you got to really immerse yourself in it in order to learn it. And so that's what she's been doing. And if you'd like some more information about Rita, you can, you can just check out on Instagram. It's Rita Goodroe. So it's GOD ROE. And also you can go to her website, ritamademedowit.com. She's got a podcast called that as well. We'll talk a little, right? It's called, the Rita Made Me Do It podcast. Mm-hmm. We'll talk a little bit about that. I've been on there. So again, if you want some more information about Rita, just check her out Instagram, Twitter, and, or ritamademedowit.com. All right, cool. So, you make this transition. For one, it was like a volunteer thing, and it was just kind of a fun thing. And then, and then it's like, wait a minute, this is kind of turning into a business. Someone says, hey, will you coach me? So you probably didn't have a plan there. How did you come up with the plan now to say, all right, I think I have a business here. I'm going to start charging people. Yeah. Did you have different models that you were testing? Was there like was there a one-time fee, multiple fees, monthly?
Yeah.
I just want to hear all that stuff.
Yeah. When I think about that, right. So when I was playing around, I didn't really charge. I think that the fastest way to build your business is to remove the paywall at the beginning, meaning just take away your prices. I think experience at the very beginning is more valuable than money, right? So get the experience, get the clients. I mean, I have a whole episode on that. So I definitely, my first few clients, and I like to say, it's not that I wasn't getting paid. It's that it was for no fee, right? Like not for free. It was no fee. I say that about speaking too. Like I'm never doing anything for free. I might be doing it for no fee. And that's because I'm getting value back through the experience or through a testimonial or through building a relationship or through, so I'm always getting something of value, right? Now, what I did do eventually was invoice those clients and then comp it like I would as an attorney, right? This is $500, but I've comped it and it's $0. So they started learning what my value was. So they knew if they kept working with me at a certain point, like what they could expect. But when I did first charge someone, the way that I did it, so the minute that I decided, okay, this is a real thing, I'm going to go full time on this, the first thing I did was hire a business coach. I did it immediately. When I had been thinking about leaving the law to do this and playing around with it part-time, I had been kind of talking to a business coach about, well, how would I do this? What would I do? So when I made the decision, I hired her right away. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to need you. That was a first investment I made, right? I was like, I'm not going to try to figure this all out on my own. And so I hired her, and we had talked about a lot of things, but the way that I ended up doing the pricing, I remember the first client that I had where I was like, okay, now I'm full time. I can't do this for free anymore. I've been free for a couple of people anyway. I feel solid in my expertise and my experience. I went with what I call the loosey-goosey pricing model, which is I said, well, what would I like to be making for what I'm doing and how I'm working with people? And then what's the bare minimum where I would feel super resentful if I went under that price? Like I would be angry that I was doing work at that price. And that was my range. And I said, you know what, whatever number I feel comfortable with, I'm just going to say it on the phone. And so not everybody got the same price quote, right? I would talk to some people and I think it was between $200 and $500. I was coaching for 2 hours a month, and I gave them like kind of email access to me. And that was it when I first started my coaching business. And so I was like, all right, like that's it. And so I would get on the sales calls, and when they'd say, Rita, I'd love to work with you. What is it? Whatever felt like confident and good is what came out of my mouth. Most often it was like $300. I was like, well, it's $300 a month for a minimum of 3 months, right? Because that's what you need to like start seeing results. And people were like, okay. And I remember feeling like after I had like 5 or 6 people just in a row say, yep. I was like, well, maybe I should raise my rate. And I raised it to like 500. And after I had like 3 people say yes in a row, I was like, okay, maybe I should, keep raising my rate, which is what I've done now. Every time I get like 3 people at my current rate, I just do a small incremental increase up to the next rate and then 3 more. So I've been doing that now forever. So I started at anywhere between 200 and 500. Usually it was around 300 a month. And now, I'm at $1,750 a month for private coaching, and I only have 10 clients. So I went from like 30 clients a month to like 10 clients a month at a much higher price point, but there's a lot more that's included. And obviously my experience is a lot different. And I'm a business coach now, which people are willing to invest a little more in than date coaching anyway. But there was no magic. I didn't have my perfect packages or my perfect pricing or my perfect anything. I just knew I needed to start making money, and I needed to start somewhere. And I was going to quote what felt good to me, and because that's the energy that people would pick up on the other end of the line, and it worked. And then when I saw that was working, I just kind of bumped it up a little and bumped bumped it up a little. And then eventually I figured out my pricing. I mean, my packages. I figured out what I was offering as I was working with people, but I had to work with people to figure all of that out. Otherwise I was just going to be guessing, you know?
Yeah, again, it's just so many things that you just said in there, and I think one of the biggest takeaways from what you were saying is I think a lot of people get caught up in just wanting it to be perfect, right? It's
Yeah.
got to be perfect, and well, the light's not always going to be green, the stars are never always going to be aligned, right? So you just got to go out there and do it and just test stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they're just scared to do what you've done, because what if you gave one person this price and the other person this price? What if they met? What if they did meet? Who cares? Okay, yeah.
That's what I thought. I was like, what if they met? And then I thought, who cares? Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because the value, I think you have to remember, value to each person is relative anyway. What is worth $10,000 to somebody might only be worth $10 to somebody else. So it's not even like that person, as long as I was showing up for them and giving them the results that they want, I guarantee they felt like it was a deal at that price point, whatever that price point was. Nobody was going to be resentful or angry. And if they were, I'd figure it out, right? That's the other piece. I trusted myself. The reason I can take fast action, and I tell, because people are like, Rita, how can you just do these things? And I'm like, well, I trust myself to do it. But more importantly, I trust myself to figure it out if it doesn't work. So what if people had met and they were mad? Well, then I probably would have comped somebody for another 3 months to make them feel better. I would have done whatever I needed to do to make them happy. I would have, in a way that felt good to me. So I just knew if that happened, I'll figure it out. If that happens, I'll navigate it. It'll be fine. Right. And so that's what allows me to take action over and over again.
And it's also what entrepreneurs do. I mean, it's so beautiful just listening to you say that, because that's exactly what entrepreneurs do. We figure things out. You hear it all the time. A lot of times we're putting fires out, and which that's no fun, but a lot of times we're just solving a problem. Or solving a challenge. We don't like to call them problems. So we got a challenge, we're going to fix it, right? And that's the life of an entrepreneur. And I just love,
It's like, what if nobody comes to my clubhouse room? Whatever, I'll figure it out. What if nobody logs into my
What if you don't get invited by Mike called into his room? I mean, what happens?
It's like, all right. It's like, what if nobody buys my program? Whatever, I'll figure it out. I'll troubleshoot it. I'll tweak it. Like, I'll figure it out. It's not going to be the end of the world. You have to have that mentality to be successful in business. You have to trust your ability to navigate whatever result comes from the actions you take. Not just trust yourself to take the action, but to navigate whatever happens as a result of taking the action. If you don't trust yourself to do that, that's where you need to do the work.
Yep. So you build this business, this dating business that still exists today, and then you also start to work with entrepreneurs and building their businesses. And it again, it wasn't, for those listening, again, if you. I'm guessing you started from the very beginning, and I just want to remind you, it didn't happen overnight. Okay. She didn't just start her dating business and then instantly go to now, teaching people how to run a business. It took time, right? Years.
It took like a year. It took a year. So, but here's the trajectory of how it happened. I was speaking around dating, and what I was talking about, people started coming up to me saying, oh my gosh, I love your story around dating and stuff, but I'm thinking of starting a business. How have you already been on the stage to speak? How have you already gotten these clients? Tell me what you're doing. And I started for free mentoring women on how to grow their business. Right. And so I started doing that just like I'm a business owner growing a business. I'm going to pay it forward and tell some other people what I'm doing. But I realized very quickly that I really enjoyed that a lot. So for that first year of my date coaching, I started transitioning into the business coaching. So what I did was, with the dating world, the community that I had built, I started sharing, oh my gosh, like somebody asked me to mentor them on their business, and I'm so excited about this, right? And then I would share a little more, and like, wow, for the first time I was asked to speak, not about dating, but to come speak about business. And like my date coaching community was actually cheering me on to step more and more into the business coaching. So they were not surprised when I kind of said, I'm not really a dating coach anymore. I've decided I really love this, and I moved, and they were all behind it. They were like, way to go. So for a year, I kind of took them along on the journey of my pivot so it went from, for every business coaching client I got, I wouldn't take a date. So for a while I was half and half business coaching, half date coaching. Right. And then I would sign another business client, and then I wouldn't renew a date coaching client. I would sign another business client. I went until eventually all of my clients were business clients. Right. And now that I go around and speak about business, everybody's like, cool, awesome. Also, do you still date coach? Right. And I'm like, of course. And so I'm like, great. But of course I will, if I feel like I really like the person. It's more a feel good good thing for me. I mean, I get paid for it, but it's not what I do. But every now and then I'll find somebody and I'll be like, yeah, I'll date coach you. Sure. But I'm 100% now a business strategist, right? I work with sales teams and business owners to help them sell better. But like, that's how I did it, right? I pivoted gradually, and I had a plan, and I took my audience and community along for the ride with me. So they weren't surprised. They weren't shocked. It wasn't like, wait, what? You were a dating coach one day and then a business coach the other day? Where did that come from? You're not really an expert in any of these things. You're just hopping around. No, they saw how I was like moving from one thing to the other, right? So it just made sense to them. They're like, of course, Rita's a business coach now. It was not a surprise to them at all.
Again, I just, I just love what you're saying, because I think a lot of people, they see the success, or they see, business coaches like yourself and business strategists like yourself, and they think, yeah, and it's just, there's just too much of it out there right now. There's just too much of these people that don't know what they're doing, and they're just offering bad advice. So you've done it, and again, by the way, you're also a practicing attorney for 13 years that had been in the corporate world, that saw a lot of things and understood how businesses work.
Understood a lot of, but I didn't start coaching as the valedictorian. I started coaching where I was at, right? So I wasn't coaching people how to make $1 million when I was only making 3,000 in my business in the month, right? Yeah.
And again, it just makes total sense. So, I like what I was, as you're talking, I don't know if you're prepared to do this. Hopefully you can. I'd love to hear 2 success stories. I'd like to hear your a success story on the dating side and like what happened there, like your favorite one of all time. And then I'd like to maybe also hear, a success story on the coaching side of, it doesn't have to be the biggest one or whatever.
I've got two.
All right, cool. Let's hear them.
All right. So the dating one, it's a little story, but it's powerful. And I actually use it when I talk about business too. So it's good. It's double duty if you're single and you run a business here with the lessons. But, so there was this woman, and she was dating, and she was, not finding like the right guy. And eventually she went out with a guy, and she called me, and she was like, Rita, like she was my client at this point. She's like, Rita, I've gone out with so-and-so 3 times and I really like him. And he like checked all our boxes. And she's like, and he's great, and I'm going to break up with him. And I was like, wait, what, like, what's happening? And she was like, look, Rita, he never calls me. He only texts me. And I think that that's so disrespectful. I think if he really liked me, he would pick up the phone and call me. And I said, well, have you told him that you want him to pick up the phone and call you? And she was like, no, he should just know. He should just know that that's the way to treat a woman. I said, oh, so you want to date a mind reader? That's cool. Like, where do the mind readers hang out? Like, what bar do they go to? Because that sounds like a fun place to be. And she was like, oh, fine, Rita, fine. I'll tell him, right? And so we talked about how to tell him, and she told him there's like a way that you can tell. But, she was like, I really love it, and it makes me feel really good when I hear somebody's voice, and texting's not really my thing. So I'd love to ask if you could start calling me and not texting me anymore. And guess what? He started calling her, and he stopped texting her, and they're married, right? Like 2 years later, they got married. And I was like, I was like, so you were willing to break up with a guy, right? And she said, well, what if I told him that I wanted him to call me and then he would break up with me? And I was like, but you were going to break up with him anyway, right? But it was that feeling of like, well, I don't want to face rejection and hear that somebody doesn't want to do that for me. So it's easier to cut and run. But instead, I just made her communicate it and then know if he cuts and runs, we'll figure it out, right? And so the fact that they got married, and it all came because she just started feeling confident to communicate what she wants. And the reason they have a healthy marriage is because she communicates now with confidence, what she wants and what she needs in a way that's respectful, but like she trusts that if her request is denied, it's not the end of the world. She'll figure it out. They'll figure out a compromise or something. And so that's a small story, but it's really one of my favorite stories because so many people do this. They expect people to know how they want to be treated, and they penalize people for not following boundaries that these people don't even know. They're like, oh, that person is disrespecting my boundaries. And I'm like, well, did you communicate to them that you had this boundary? And they're like, no. And I'm like, so you're punishing a person for doing something that they don't even know they're doing because you haven't communicated to them that they're doing it. And they're like, yeah. So a lot of people want people to read minds, and that's just not the way dating or the world works. And so I think that that's like my favorite story for that point. So I said, you just have to start asking for what you want. And the people who love you and respect you and want to be in your world, they want to honor your boundaries. They want to help make you happy. The ones who don't are the ones that are going to be pissed off that you set one to begin with. They're the ones that are going to be angry. So let those people go.
There's one word that you said multiple times with that story, and I think you probably know what it is, and it does cross over to personal and business relationships, and that's the ability to communicate, right? So many of us just, for whatever reason, whatever the blockage that we have in our brains, we just, like you said, she just said, well, he should know this. Well, I love your response. Oh, so you want to date a mind reader? And cool. If she had made that decision, who knows where her life would have gone, but it's so simple too, right? It's just so simple. What you said, ask for what you want, right? I got my first book is called Ask More, Get More, and communicate with people. Don't assume that they know, because they probably don't.
Well, and the reason too that she was not wanting to have that conversation was because she was worried about the rejection. What if I actually hear that somebody doesn't care about me enough to want to do that? So you have to, I mean, especially as an entrepreneur, but especially in all areas, really, you have to learn how to not personalize rejection and how to look at it as an asset instead of a liability, so that it moves forward instead of hinders you, right? And that was the real work that she did. We had to prepare her to get ready to communicate that, so that if she heard what she didn't want to hear, she could navigate whatever resulted from the action that she took. So that's probably my favorite dating story.
That makes a lot of sense. And again, I just want to really stress, and what we're talking about is communicating, and it's really, really simple stuff. I mean, for some people, for whatever reason, they have trouble with it, but the basics of what you just said is just ask. Hey, what do you think about this? And like you said, what's the worst that could happen? Okay, he says no, or he does exactly what you were going to do anyway.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? Like you just said, you figure it out.
Yep, that's true.
You just figure it out. And that's such a beautiful story. All right, give me a business one. Right. Give me a business one.
The business one, I'll use a pandemic business story, actually. So it was at the very beginning of the pandemic. So I had a client who had signed up with me in January, and by February, right, we were like, and by March, everything was shut down. This is important because she's in marketing, but she's in brand, like printing logos onto that kind of branding,
merchandising,
right?
Type stuff. Yep.
Yeah. And she did it for the hospitality industry. I mean, most of her clients were hotels, right? And events, like event planning. And so the first thing to come to a halt were hotels. And she was like, Rita, I don't know what to do. Right. And I said, well, we really need to be focusing on networking right now and relationship building. And she was like, yeah, but she's like, here's the thing. I don't even know who to reach out to anymore. Like, people who were there aren't there. And I said, okay. So I said, let's look at networking. She's like, besides, why should I network when they're not going to buy what I have to offer right now? I said, no. We're looking at networking in the wrong way. So let's look at networking differently. I want you to be thinking about the problem that your customer base, your target audience, your prospective clients, what problems are they having right now? And I want you to brainstorm all of them. Even if you're not the one who can solve the problem, even if you're not the solution to their problem, I still want you to identify all of their problems, right? And then when you're networking, what you're doing is you're networking to find people who could solve the problems that you're not able to solve, right? Who are those people in your network who who you might need to nurture relationships with, that you could introduce your client to, because these people can actually solve a problem right now. So that's one thing that I want you to do, because that's value for your clients, even if you're not the one providing the solution, right? Not number one. Number two, I want you to network with your weakest links. So there was a study by some professor at Stanford back in the 70s who said basically your contacts can be divided into 4 categories. They can be divided into your friends and family, so like the people closest to you, peers, right? So like other entrepreneurs or your coworkers at work, so people who kind of do what you do or they work with you. Your long lost connections, so people from high school, your college boyfriend, people who used to know you personally or pretty well, and you don't talk to them anymore. And then people who you're connected to who you've never met or talked to, like maybe it's somebody who followed you because they saw you speak speaking somewhere, or maybe you've kind of interacted a little bit, but you've never met that person and you don't know about them, right? And what the study found was that your biggest opportunities come from that third category, your weakest link, your weakest tie, I think is what it's called, those long lost connections, for the reason that they used to know you really well, but now you don't talk to them anymore. So they're in a network that is completely different than your network. So when you do reestablish those connections, there are opportunities there that you don't even know about because they're not already floating in your orbit. There are also opportunities for them because they're not floating in your orbit. Whereas your peers, your professionals, you're seeing each other at all the same stuff, your friends and family, especially around your business, like they don't care. And people who don't know you, but know of you, like they don't have that personal connection enough to really want to support you. So if you spend time nurturing that third category, you're going to find opportunities you never knew existed. So this becomes important because she said, fine, I'll do my networking and I'll start with my weakest ties and I'll brainstorm all these problems. And so two things happened. She realized as she talked to her clients just to say, how are you doing? How are you navigating the pandemic? What's going on? They all said the same thing. You know what we need? We need masks. We need masks. We need PPE. This is right at the beginning, right? When it was scarce and hard. They're like, we need it for our staff. We need it for the clients that are coming into the hotel. Like we really need it and we don't have any and it's hurting us. And she was like, okay. Then as she was going through her weakest links, she reached out to a friend from high school and said, what are you doing now? And that person said, oh, I'm working with 3M, doing distribution of all this. And so she was talking and she was like, really? And she's like, actually, I have a client and that client is in need of like some PPE. Do you? And they're like, oh my God. And they're like, so then they said, this is what we're looking for a manufacturer. And it turned out in her network, she was connected to somebody who was running a manufacturing plant, like in another country, who could produce PPE. So like, because she was networking and just re-engaging with her audience, she had talked to a friend, a colleague she had forgotten she had in her network who was running a manufacturing plant in another country, right? And then she had this high school friend who was working for 3M distributing who needed a connection to a manufacturing plant to be able to produce the PPE. And then she had a client who needed the PPE. So her high school buddy and her ended up going into business together right in that very moment and becoming a contractor. And they won all of these big state contracts. They won all of these hospitality private company like bids and proposals. And they were sending all of this PPE. She literally told me that when I remember she called, she said, oh, by the way, some really interesting stuff has happened in the past like 5 days from this networking stuff. And I said, well, tell me about it. She's like, well, I've won 3 contracts, right? The largest contract is $28 million. And I was like, wait, what? And she was like, yeah. And so at the end of the day, within a month, she had enough contracts so that the profit to her, not that, well, the money that was coming to her personally. So I guess that's, but the money that was going to come to her from the contract. So it's not all profit, it's revenue, but the revenue her business was generating was going to be $10 million. And she said, I literally just became a millionaire overnight. She's like, and now we need to talk about my mindset because I'm not ready to be a millionaire. I don't see myself as a millionaire, but I need to start seeing myself as a millionaire. And she's like, I can't believe it. She pivoted industries. She got so busy. I mean, the bid and proposal world and the contracting world, it's a sleep. If you love sleep, it's a nightmare. You're not going to get sleep, especially if you're a small business, like just her and her partner, and they brought on some other people to help with some contracts. But like, that was the power of just changing the way she networked, saying, what are the problems that my clients have, even if I can't solve them? Who do I need to know who can help solve their problem? And you never know what's going to happen from thinking that way and making connections. And the fact that, she became a multimillionaire in 30 days. Now, that's unusual. I tell people it's probably not going to happen like that, right? The sun, moon, and stars aligned for her. But it's really important to see the power of coming at networking a lot differently than people usually come at it. So that's my favorite business story by far.
I love that story. I think I told you this. I'm in the middle of writing my 7th book, and it's called Connection Capital. And it's just exactly, I mean, there's so many of the things that you just said. In fact, we're probably going to take some of the transcript and put it in the book, and we'll talk about that later. Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. And I learned that I had a mentor of mine once, and he said, Mike, rather than looking outside for stuff that you're trying to do, take a look at what you already have and see what you can do with what you already have. And that's exactly the advice you gave. And by the way, it didn't cost her anything.
No, just time.
Zero.
Just an investment.
And it's like I love that story. It's so powerful, and anybody can do it. She went to her weakest market, her weakest connections. She re-engaged them, essentially, sparked that connection again, and then, did business with her old high school buddy. And now she's a multimillionaire, and all because of just something really, really simple of taking a look at what you have, reconnecting and reestablishing that relationship. Man, that's awesome.
It's incredible, right? It's incredible. The power of relationship, the power of connecting, being that super connector, really knowing who's in your network. It falls right in perfectly with the book that you're writing, because it cost her nothing but an investment of time and changing her mindset, and then being ready for an opportunity when she saw it, and being okay with pivoting away from what she was doing to take that opportunity. So yeah, 100%. My favorite business story by far.
So, all right. So if someone wants to work with you, how can they find you? What do they do? I know you get some things going on. I know you bring people into to like small groups. Tell us, the viewers and listeners,
so
what you got going on.
I do work with people in a couple of ways. I obviously take a few private coaching clients every year. I have a mastermind group that is currently running that will reopen again in September. And then, so the mastermind group will reopen in September, but I have a program coming up in just the next couple of weeks called The Most Important Thing. And really what your listeners can do is, I do a free 5-part live stream series called The 5 Most Important Things I Do in My Business. And it does exactly what you just said, because I love this concept of, you can do less and get more. And the way that you do that is stop going wide and go deep. Stop trying to do all the things, pick the right things and go deep on them, and you're going to get bigger results. Stop trying to get more eyes on you. Know what to do with the eyes that are already on you, and nurture those relationships, and you're going to get bigger results. So the most important thing actually helps you make more money by freeing up your time, because you're not doing nothing, but you're doing the most important things, and you're saying no to everything else. So you go really deep and you get the same results. I think results are equal to the actions you take. So if you're taking a little bit of a lot, you're only going to get a little bit of results. But if you're taking, a lot of action in one area, the results are going to be just as deep. So before I even launch the program, I kind of give this information away for free in this free 5-part live stream series called The 5 Most Important Things I Do in My Business. And that's going to be coming up soon. It's on the week of April 19th. It's that 5-part live stream series. So registering for that, you can find information on my website or in my Facebook group, The All-In Entrepreneur, or you can just look maybe in the show notes and click on the link directly for the registration page for it. And by registering, you'll be eligible to win some prizes. I always give away prizes in my live stream, and you'll get like a fun little workbook that'll help you come up with your own plan for the 5 most important things that you should be focusing on in your business, so that you can do more in less time, make more money, live more of a life while still making the impact that you want to make.
Absolutely love it. I love it. Dropping gems, as we would say, that we learned on Clubhouse. We've been on with Rita Goodroe, and man, the stuff she's talking about is the business fundamentals she's been talking about. People pay her now. We didn't even talk about it, but pay her a lot of money to work with her one-on-one. And she's given a lot of this stuff away for free. But if you wanted to dive deeper and really kind of connect with her, just go ahead and check her out first on Instagram. It's Rita Goodroe. She's also on Clubhouse as well. You can also go to ritamademeidoit.com. And then, within the show notes, we'll also have some links for you as well, where you can just get right there. And if you're listening to this post the 19th, I'm just assuming that there's going to be more opportunities for you as well.
Yeah, 100%. I'm always doing something. I can't not be supporting people. The best thing to do is just reach out to me, and I'll tell you what the good right next step is for you in your business with where you are.
I love it. It's just been an amazing show. I'm super excited that we connected. You're just a great human being. And I also love having people, again, we've talked about this before, I usually talk about this in the beginning, but I love having people on the podcast that are doing it, that have done it, that continue to do it. She's not just making this shit up. She's doing it. She's learned, she's made mistakes, and now she's also helping other people. I mean, that story is just an amazing story. I mean, you just rewind it and listen to it again, how simple was the advice that she gave. But a lot of times it's the simple things that work.
Yes, it really is. It really, really is. It doesn't have to be complicated. It won't be easy, right? Because building a business is not the easiest thing you've ever done, but it doesn't have to be complex. It can be simple. And I think that's so important.
All right. Well, again, this has been another edition of the Alden Report. By the way, if you like what you're listening to right now, I usually don't ask this, but I'm going to ask it now because we talked about it. If you like what you're listening to, if you like what you're watching, I'd like for you to share it. I'd like for you to rate it and share it again with your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, because the information here is in fact valuable from real people changing people's lives. So again, share it, like it, give us a good review. Again, my name is Michael Alden. This has been another edition of the Alden Report. That's Rita Goodroe, and we'll see you soon. Hey, it's Mike Alden. I hope you're enjoying the Alden Report as much as I am. I love bringing to you new and exciting people that add value to your life. I'm also super excited to announce my latest book, Bestseller Secrets. Listen, if you're an author, maybe you're thinking about writing a book, maybe you've already written a book, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to continue to grow your brand, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to bring in more leads, maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you wrote a cookbook or a children's book, maybe you wrote a fantasy book, a self-help book, a tell-all book, a novel. It doesn't really matter. In my latest book, Bestseller Secrets, I give you all the information that I've literally spent millions of dollars trying to figure this thing out, and I'm going to give it to you absolutely free with my book, Bestseller Secrets. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com. I give you all the information that I've spent literally millions of dollars trying to figure this whole world out. My books have gone on to do amazing things. I'm a 3-time Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestselling author. I've hit #1 on Amazon hundreds of times. My books have been the #1 book in the world against all books in every category. And I've also done this for other authors. And I'm giving you this information absolutely free. Just go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. You got to pay a small processing fee, but it doesn't really matter, again, because I've spent millions of dollars. And here's the other secret. You can do all this stuff yourself. If you don't have a team, that's okay. If you don't have a lot of time, that's okay. You read the information in my book, again, whether you just started writing a book, whether you've written the book, whether you wrote the book years ago, and you want to kind of resurrect it. In my book, Bestseller Secrets, I show you exactly what you need to do, and I'm giving you the book absolutely free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com, download the book, take that information, use it to become a bona fide, legitimate #1 bestseller. I show you how to become a #1 bestseller in less than 24 hours. And again, I'm giving you this information for free. Go to bestsellersecretsbook.com. Again, it's bestsellersecretsbook.com.